whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues. We'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So Carson Wentz is sacked 9 times. Washington Commanders fail to score for the first 3 quarters of the ball game as they lose in ugly fashion, 24-8 to the Philadelphia Eagles. Wasn't a lot of bright spots from yesterday's game and performance. Washington now is 1-2 on the season, and depending on what happens on Monday Night Football, they could be in sole possession of last place all by their lonesome. So there's a lot right now of emotion, a lot of emotions that the fans are going through right now because this was supposed to be different. This season was supposed to be different. And if it's not one thing, it's another with this organization, with this team. I can tell you this, and I think I communicated this yesterday on the post-game show, but I want to say this again clearly because it's always better to allow a day to pass when you really dive into your emotions. A lot of times the first emotion in these particular situations is usually the right emotion. However, there are a lot of things that I assumed going into the season, and I should never assume anything with this football team, and that's probably an error on my part, and I know better. But nonetheless, because of past track record with our offensive line coach, John Matsko, and the success he's had over the first 2 years here in Washington with whatever combination of offensive linemen we put on the field, we were down to our 5th string center at one point last season, and he made it work. And so with all the shuffling that we did along the offensive line, guys were hurt for the season. Wes Schweitzer was gone at a point. Tyler Larson was gone. Obviously, Chase Rouillet was gone. And we were shuffling around parts on the offensive line. Sheriff got hurt for a little spell there. And so you had to do the thing that we always do, which is shuffle around pieces. He made it work. He made it work in 2020 when we had a bunch of injuries up front. He made it work in 2021. And my assumption was he's going to keep the ball rolling. He's just going to keep the train going. And no matter who we plug in the game, we had a preseason game earlier this summer against the Kansas City Chiefs in which we started Aaron Montero. Now, I get it. It's a preseason game. There was no Chris Jones, yada, yada, yada. But the offensive line held up is essentially the point that I'm trying to get to. Is that we put, random guys in the game, starting them, and put our starters on the field with those guys and entrusted that they would get the job done, and they did. And so all it did was further strengthen my belief that no matter what 5 guys we put on the field as offensive linemen in front of Carson Wentz, they're going to do their job and they're going to do it adequately enough so that he has the time to deliver the football down the field. That was one of the assumptions that I made going into the season. It was the furthest thing from my mind when I talked about the continuity of the offensive line. And we've talked about that several times, but I said, honestly speaking, one of the few guarantees, and there are no guarantees, and sadly, we had to find that out the hard way. One of the few guarantees on this team is that the offensive line, no matter what shape, it's in, okay, no matter who's healthy and who's not, they're going to perform at a baseline level, okay? Their worst is still going to be good enough for this offense to function. They're going to perform it at a bare minimum, a baseline level of adequate, which is going to allow this offense to function. We may not be able to run the football as effectively as we like, but one thing we've done since Ron Rivera has gotten here, along with John Matsko, is we've been able to pass protect. That's the one thing we've all, whether Sheriff was in the lineup or not. So we can talk about Sheriff's departure and what that did to the offensive line. He was hurt every year. Now, was it for 8 or 12 games a lot of times? But he was hurt. He would miss 4 games. He would miss 6 games. So we got accustomed to functioning without Brandon Sheriff. So that's not the reason why the offensive line isn't performing. It's a combination of different things. But make no mistake about it, the one thing I didn't account for was this offensive line being dreadful and not being able to protect against a 4-man rush and stunting the growth of this offense in the process. That's the thing. I could have never imagined that 3 weeks into the season, one of the biggest issues we might have is the offensive line. Now, it may not be, and again, I can't wait to get my hands on the film, and hopefully the NFL does their job and uploads the film today like they're supposed to at some point. and I'll have it tomorrow and we can go over it. But I'm assuming that when I watch the film, I'm going to feel the same way I felt about the offensive line. This isn't good enough. I'm going to feel like, yep, Carson could have gotten rid of that football. Yep, Carson could have done this. And the thing that's probably going to piss me off the most, like it did last week watching the film against Detroit in the first half in particular, is that I'm going to see guys running open down the field and know that there were opportunities to take advantage of this Eagles defense. And because the protection up front wasn't good enough, where Carson started to panic. And again, I don't blame him for panicking, because you start getting your brains bashed in, you're going to start flinching. You're going to start looking around for the next hit. So instead of you keeping your eyes down the field and standing in that pocket tall, looking to deliver the football down the field, you're looking for an exit. Okay, you're looking for a backdoor exit, an escape door. You're looking to get out of there. And you're a lot of times running into more pressure and more problems. But again, that's probably going to be the most frustrating part about watching the film, is that I'm going to look at the all 22s and I'm going to see a combination of routes being run down the field that allows guys to get open. And if the time was there, opportunities might have been there. And that's frustrating. But let me reiterate this one more time. The one thing I counted on was the offensive line doing their job. That was the one thing I counted on going into the season. There weren't a lot of things that I felt like I could hang my hat on. Didn't know what we were going to get out of the defense. Still don't really know from week to week what we're going to get out of the defense. Didn't really know what we were going to get out of Carson. Kind of was hoping we'd get him to, get back on track. But and he's done that. He's shown flashes of that. This was not a great performance by him, obviously. But that was something that we went into the season knowing that it was a wild card. Really didn't know what to expect from the tight end position with all the injuries that we incurred during the preseason, and how these guys were going to perform. Didn't know what Logan Thomas was going to look like coming back. You could put your finger on a bunch of different things that you were uneasy about. But the one thing that I thought I could count on was the offensive line. So, to my surprise, that 3 weeks into the season, the one thing that I thought I could count on the most may be the biggest liability on the entire football team. And without the offensive line, the offense itself ceases to exist, especially if your play caller isn't going to adapt and adjust to what's going on in front of him. So it complicates and compounds that matter even further. So again, the film will tell me if Scott Turner did in fact give Carson Wentz some opportunities to get the ball out of his hands, and he didn't. And again, adjust. If Carson's not checking it down, if he wants, because, some of that, I think some of the wanting to get Philadelphia so bad, you squeeze so tight that it becomes counterproductive. I think some of that occurred in this game. Instead of Carson taking what was in front of him, trying to keep the sticks moving, he didn't do that until the second half. Instead of him doing that in the first half, I think he was trying to make the big play. He was trying to get some of it back immediately, and it hurt him. That's where some of the sacks may have come in. But if you see that, again, this is the thing that bothers me. Again, if you see that as a play caller, okay, Carson's pressing right now. Call some things that calm him down. Call a tight end screen. We bootlegged Carson one time. We moved the pocket one time, if I'm not mistaken, in this game. And he had John Bates wide open in the flats, and the ball got deflected, and it was incomplete. Move the pocket. Like, these are elementary, fundamental things that you do when pressure is being applied. And again, they weren't blitzing. So running a wide receiver screen doesn't help you if they're not bringing pressure. Okay? So the whole idea of, hey, let's just get it out of his hands, throw screens, things. They weren't, 7 of the 9 sacks came with 4-man pressures. They weren't blitzing. That's not what the Eagles do. They don't blitz. So it wasn't a situation where, hey, let's just throw a bubble screen. It wasn't like last week when we played Detroit, where they were coming with pressure and you felt like, hey, just get rid of it. They're coming with 6 or 7 dudes. You get the ball out, they could be in some trouble. That wasn't the case last week or this week against the Eagles. They weren't coming with pressure. We were getting beat by 4 guys. So you're allowing 7 guys in coverage to all keep eyes on the quarterback, it's easy to play defense that way. It's the best way to play defense, frankly. Because you get to tee off at that point. But they had to figure out better ways to get the football out of his hands quickly. And it just felt like they never did that. Carson never got into a rhythm. He never figured out how to just get it out of his hands until it was way too late, till we were down 24-0. Scott Turner seemed to not understand that, hey, we got to run shorter routes to get it out of his hands quicker until we were down 24-0, till we got to the second half. Seems like adjustments don't get made until halftime. Well, obviously, at halftime, if you're down 22-0 or you're down 24-0, kind of late for that now, isn't it? Just a wee bit late for that. The keys to the game, man, I mean, I could go over them, but for what? They didn't achieve a single key to the game. There was nothing good to take away from the game in terms of the keys to the game. Protect Wentz and the Duke. We turned it over, and he was sacked 9 times. I mean, what more do you want me to say? Everybody eats. Everybody didn't eat in this game. Jahan dropped a pass. Terry dropped a pass. I mean, Logan Thomas, I don't even know if he had a catch in this game. If he did, it was a minimal gain. This wasn't the kind of game that, you get excited about. It was a lot of underneath passes. Again, when you can't protect, it stunts the growth of the offense, and everybody don't get to eat. Start fast, finish faster. I mean, do I even need to elaborate on that? I will say this, though. On the start fast, I literally wanted to have credit for that because the defense started fast. The special teams started fast this week. I mean, Eagles had poor field position for most of the first quarter. Into the second quarter, I thought the combination of the defense and the special teams really allowed the game to be 0-0 at the end of one. And understand, the Eagles scored 24 points in one period. They didn't score a single point the other 3 quarters of the game. And don't let anybody lie to you and tell you that the Eagles took their foot off the gas pedal. No, they would have embarrassed us if they could. They just couldn't in the second half. Okay? They could have embarrassed us. Now, I think as you get later into the fourth quarter, you're just trying to run and get the hell out of, the building now. At that point, you just want the game to be over. But they tried to keep their foot on the gas pedal in the third quarter and into the fourth quarter early on. They just couldn't. They couldn't get back to where they were in the second quarter. But keep in mind, they struggled in the first quarter. So it makes sense that they struggled in the third and the fourth quarter. They scored all their points in the second quarter, and it started with a Ron Rivera failed challenge, which gave up a field goal. And then it went to a Carson Wentz fumble that led to another touchdown. They didn't start really making plays until, and this is the shit I talked about, front running. We let them get out to a 10-0 lead, and then Jalen Hurts' confidence started to swell. Then he started to stick his chest out with bravado. Then they started to make plays. It wasn't until they got that lead. He was tight. He was missing opportunities. He was 1 of 5 to start the game. They weren't running the football. We did a great job of keeping him in the pocket. And then Ron didn't challenge a play that I think would have been overturned. And maybe it wouldn't have been, because I never saw a definitive angle that showed me that he bobbled and that he didn't get 2 feet in. But again, as a coach, you got to make the officials go to New York and look at every single angle and come back and tell you, hey, we didn't see anything to change the call. Okay, I can live with that. What I can't live with is you allowing them to come 45 yards up the field, go no huddle, snap the ball before you throw the challenge flag. It's not that hard. I don't know if he's Bill Belichick in the challenge flag, got the shit tucked away in his shoe, and he couldn't bend down fast enough to get it out. I don't know where he keeps the challenge flag, but that's inexcusable. And he said that after the game. I got to throw the challenge flag faster. I don't know what the hell he was waiting on. Personally, he's thrown the challenge flag for less. But it wasn't until they got a little bit of a lead that they started to smell themselves. They smelled a little blood in the water, and they started to get, okay, we're out in front now. I can relax and just go play ball, which is why I talked about game pressure. It's going to the defensive side of the ball. I talked about constant game pressure on Hurts. That happened in the first quarter. He didn't perform well. The problem was that didn't happen in the second quarter. It didn't happen in the third quarter or the fourth quarter. And so there was no game pressure on him after the first quarter, where he didn't perform well, where the Eagles were shut out. And that was what I feel really confident in that assertion that you put game pressure on that Eagles offense, I don't think it's going to perform the way that it did in the second quarter. The Eagles have scored 24 points or more in each of the first 3 games in the first half. This is a front-running team. You knew that going into the game. And yet you still let them get 24 points in the second quarter. So that's the frustrating part, is that a lot of what happened could have been avoided. But the offensive line was terrible. The offense put the defense in some compromising positions. And at some point, the dam didn't have to break, but you knew it was going to. That's who we are. We're not a defense that's going to stand up, as Ron likes to say, and bow its back. That's not who we are. We're not a defense that's going to bow its back and stop teams in the red zone and force turnovers and get the ball back. If you keep putting the defense on the field, eventually they're going to give up plays, which is why offensively it's their job to keep the defense off the field as much as possible. The less we see of the defense, the more effective it can be. The more we see of the defense, the less effective it's going to be. And that's what happened in the game. It happened against Detroit. They started out well in that game, and the more the offense struggled, the more the defense got on the field, the more mental lapses we saw, the more big plays we gave up, the more points we gave up. Same thing happened in this game. Again, I could go through all of these keys to the game, limit the TNT and C4, make them earn it. They had big plays in the second quarter. After the second quarter, they had no big plays. All their big plays came in one effing quarter, and that's frustrating. Frustrating. You got them on a 3rd and 6. They were in a simple mesh concept, and you let Devontae Smith catch the football, turn up the sideline, and get like 30. On a simple mesh concept. It's not hard. It's not rocket science. It's just little stupid stuff. You know? And it could have been worse. Hurts had, another, I want to say it was either Quez Watkins or A.J. Brown streaking down the field with at least 3 steps on the nearest defender, and he overshot him. Could have been worse. Hurts so good, rather Hurts not so good. Nope. We limited him as a rusher, but killed us through the air. Got whatever he wanted. Simple slants. That's a big part of their offense, is a slant. It's a simple slant. And we're playing 7 yards off on 3rd and 6, and they throw the slant and they get the first down. Again, I just, that baffles and boggles the mind. If you're that afraid of A.J. Brown running by you, then maybe you shouldn't be outside. Outside is for the big boys. If you're afraid of a guy that runs a 4.5 running by you, then maybe you shouldn't be outside. It's not that hard. It's really not that hard. Maybe you shouldn't be out there. Maybe you don't belong outside. Maybe you need to come inside and play with the little kids. Dallas Goedert and A.J. Brown. We needed to watch them. Keep one eye open like CBS. I thought we did a good job on Dallas Goedert except for the tight end screen. And that should have been tackled. I mean, Cam Curl, dude, what are you doing? And I actually thought defensively we were better because he was on the field. The Eagles' run game was non-effective in this game. Ineffective. Okay? Ineffective. It was a non-factor. That's what I meant to say. It was a non-factor. Hurts didn't hurt us. I'd venture to say that, and I'm going to look right now real quick. I don't even think Miles Sanders averaged 4 yards, 3 yards, maybe even 3 yards a carry in this game. I'd be shocked if he averaged 3 yards a carry in this game. He was a non-factor. Miles Sanders, 15 carries, 46 yards, 3.1 yards per carry. Barely got 3 yards a carry. He was a non-factor. And the only reason he made it, because I remember late in the game he had a 13-yard run. Without that 13-yard run, he might have averaged 2 yards a pop. Literally 2 yards a pop. The run defense was outstanding. For the first time this season, the run defense actually looked worth a damn. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Cam Curl plays and the run defense looks better. That doesn't surprise me. But he did miss a big tackle. That was frustrating. Can we get a damn turnover, please? I begged. I turned into Keith Sweat, Gerald Levert. I did the best begging I could possibly do on this show on Friday, and they still did not produce a damn turnover. It is sickening watching this defense. Most NFL defenses, they bat a ball in the air, someone's Johnny on. We don't hustle to the football, so you don't get the benefit. There was a batted ball in this game. Maybe two. Where you hold your breath hoping there'll be a white jersey somewhere around. Nope, we don't hustle to the rock fast enough. Jay Gruden said this on somebody's program last week. He doesn't see the urgency. He doesn't see guys flying to the football. We don't do that here in Washington. We don't fly to the football. I'm watching other defenses, and it's just hat after hat flying like their damn job depends on it going to the football. And when that happens and that ball comes out, guess what? Someone's going to be there to scoop it up. When that ball tips into the air, somebody's going to pick it off because we flying to the football. That ain't us. That's not how we built. That's not how we operate. So you're not going to get turnovers. You're not going to get the benefit of being lucky, because in order to benefit from luck, you got to be ready to accept the luck when it's ready to fall in your lap. And we're just not, because we don't make those opportunities for ourselves. Yeah, it was a mess yesterday. And the score doesn't really do it justice. 24-8 doesn't seem that bad when you look at it. It's only a 2-score game, but it felt much worse. Similar to the Cowboys game, the first Cowboys game last year. We were down 27-0 in that game. And somehow, miraculously, we end up down 27-20 with the football with a chance. Somehow, some way in that ball game. We never got to that point in this game with the Eagles, but that game felt like we lost 57-20. It felt like how the second game went when we lost 56-14. That's how the first game felt, even though it was 27-20. Felt a lot worse. This game felt a lot worse than the final score indicates. And that leads me to, in other news, of course, we heard from Ronald Rivera. And last night I was expecting to hear exactly what I heard. I heard it from him. I heard it from Carson. Same shit. Repetitive. Hey, we got to be better. We got to clean up this. Carson, I got to be better. I can't take 9 sacks. When you get 9 sacks, it's not just on the offensive line. That's on me. Yep, but that sounds about right. I'm glad he's taking accountability. One of the knocks on Carson Wentz everywhere he's been is he wasn't accountable. It was always somebody else's fault. It was never his fault. We haven't heard that here. Every time something goes awry, he mans up and says, hey, that was on me. Well, good. I'm glad. That's great, but that doesn't change the fact that the offense was terrible for 2 weeks in a row, especially in the first half. It's less about Carson, because at the end of the day, it's hard for him to do his job adequately when the 5 guys in front of him aren't doing their job at a high enough level. And we could debate whether he could have gotten rid of this football or got rid of that. It doesn't matter. I'm watching other games around the league, and quarterbacks don't have to make these decisions in a fraction of a second because their offensive line is getting destroyed by a 4-man rush. I'm seeing guys stand back in the pocket, confidently surveying the football field, and if they need to come down to a check down, they can do that in the proper timing and rhythm of the play as it's drawn up. Not, oh man, I got to come off of my first read. He might actually get open and shake free. I don't have time because, man, Fletcher Cox is kicking the guy's ass in front of him, and he might be coming to sack me right about now. Got to get rid of this thing. Oh, I got to get out of here, man. Brandon Graham's looking to knock the ball out of my hands. I got to get out of here right now. That shouldn't be the case. But then you get to Ronald. And I told you, I knew this was what, last night I was expecting what I got from him in terms of what he was going to say. What else is he going to say? Your team just got their asses kicked second week in a row, that you start off slow. And somebody sent me something, and I couldn't fact check it yet, And so I don't want to say that this is the gospel. But someone sent me a tweet that someone said, in Ron Rivera's 35 games here in Washington, and I'm trying to think, has it been 35 games? That seems like a really large, robust number, but yeah, 17 last year. It was 16 the year before, so that's 32, right? That's 33 actually, excuse me. 16 plus 17 is 33. 33. If you want to count the playoff game, that's 34, but I don't think they would count the playoff game. So that's 33 games. And then 3 games this season, that's 36, right? So that's 36 games. And this tweet said, in Ron Rivera's 36, it said 35, but he meant 36. In Ron Rivera's 36 games as a head coach here in Washington, in 9 of those games, Washington has allowed the opponent to start the game off scoring 20 unanswered points. In 9, a quarter of the games Ron Rivera has coached here in Washington. A quarter, 25% of the games he's coached, we've been in a 20-point deficit before the offense responded with points of their own. And as I sit here and think about that, I can think of a handful of games, and I bet you I could probably come up with the 9 if that is in fact true. Let's just because we have a little bit of time, let's see if we can do that. So obviously this year, you've got the 2 games, Detroit and Philadelphia. So that's 2. All right. So in 2021, we can go through the schedule real quick. Buffalo did it to us. They were up 21-0 before we scored a single point in that game. Let's see. I don't think it happened to us very often last year, as much as it did in 2020. It happened a boatload of times in 2020, but that's 3 right there. Let's see. Didn't happen in the Chargers game. It did happen in the Bills game. It didn't happen in the Falcons game. It did not happen in the Giants game or the Falcons game. It didn't happen in the Saints game. It didn't happen in the Chiefs game. Although the Chiefs did score 20 unanswered points in that game, but it wasn't to start the game. It did not happen against Green Bay. Or did it? That was a weird game against the Packers. It might have happened in that Green Bay game where they were up 24-0 before we finally scored, even though I don't think that was ever the case. I don't think we were down by that much against Green Bay. Didn't happen against Denver. It didn't happen during the 4-game win streak. It happened against Dallas, so that's 4. Happened in game 1 against Dallas. It happened in game 2 against Dallas. That's 5. It didn't happen in either Philadelphia Eagle game. And it didn't happen against the Giants in either game. So that's 5. And I know it happened at least 3 or 4 times in 2020. It happened against the Arizona Cardinals in 2020. It happened, so that's 6. It happened against the Giants in 2020. That's 7. It happened against the Lions. That's 8. And I want to say it happened against the Panthers. I think we were down 20-0 in that game. Don't quote me on that, but I feel like we were down 20-0 to the Panthers in that game. The Dwayne Haskins' last game here in Washington. So that would make it 9. And then there are other games, like the Eagles game, his very first game here, we were down 17-0. Right? Like, so there are other games that don't quite meet the 20-point criteria, but it was 17. You know, or we were down 14-0. I said that to say this. So that tweet is accurate. But I said all of that to say this. The problem is this is a every year thing. On a weekly basis, we're at a disadvantage from a coaching perspective because there's a chance we could give up 20 some odd points before we make any adjustments to stem the tide. And that's the problem. And what I don't want to hear is we got a bunch of young guys. There are a lot of teams in the league that have young players. You built this roster. So I don't want to hear about we got a lot of young guys and they're still learning. I don't want to hear that shit. That's what the 3 years that you had, or the 2 years previous to this year, that was what that was for. To get these young guys up to speed, to get the veterans on this team to where you needed them to be, so that when you got a quarterback, we were ready to hit the ground running. Nobody wants to hear the guys are learning shit. That's not something that appeals to us at this point. We were okay with that in year 1. We were okay with that in year 2. We don't want to hear it in year 3. I don't want to hear that guys have to be better, guys have to do their jobs. You've been saying that for 3 years. Clearly, that message isn't resonating with the guys you have in the locker room. He's not going to make any changes, clearly. And the media kills me because they ask some of the stupidest questions that don't get the kind of answers that we need to hear as a fan base. The first question I wanted to hear somebody ask was, did you ever entertain, and after watching the film, have you entertained moving some parts around on the offensive line? Wes Schweitzer had some poor snaps in this game. Not some. Most of his snaps were poor in this game. He's a better guard than he is center. Are you prepared to stick Nick Martin in there at center, get him up to speed, and take Wes Schweitzer and put him in his natural position of guard and start moving around some pieces to get this offensive line where it needs to be? Nobody asked that question. All these softball, loft job questions, asking the same repetitive, stupid-ass questions that we don't care about. Ask the shit that we want to hear about. This offensive line has been putrid 2 weeks in a row. Ask questions about them. Stop asking about Carson. Every question's about Carson Wentz. Could he have gotten the ball out faster? How about the offensive line not get beat by a four-man rush? How about you ask about the offensive line? But he's not going to make any changes. And I knew that yesterday. And until I see different, I'm just going to expect the status quo, which is ass whoopings, down big early in ball games, slow starts. And I've already said this, and I know a lot of you think I'm crazy, and you said that as much yesterday. We're going to win 3 or 4 games in a row at some point this season. You know why? Because that's what Ron Rivera teams do here in Washington. I can't speak for what he did in Carolina. But I know there are a lot of late season runs in Carolina as well. He's going to win 3 or 4 games in a row some point this season. The problem is we'll be 1-5 or 2-6 by the time that happens. And that's the shit that I'm sick of. We don't wake up in games until it's too late. We don't wake up in seasons until it's too late under Ron Rivera. And that I've run out of patience for. You built this roster. You thought it was better to move on from Ronald Darby and go out and get William Jackson III. You thought it was better to move on from Eric Flowers and insert 2 older guards that haven't gotten it done for any team that they've been in the league with except Carolina, which was 5 to 6 years ago. You thought it was okay to do that. So now we have to deal with the consequences of no depth at corner, no depth at linebacker, a position that you're supposed to be really good at. Same with your defensive coordinator. You're supposed to be able to identify talent in the 4th, in the 5th, in the 6th round that can come in here like other teams have done. I get so sick of watching another game and they talk about, man, they found a steal in the 6th round. And I'm looking at, where's my steal in the 6th round at linebacker? Everybody else is finding one. Where's ours? We got 1 steal, potentially, in Cam Curl in the 7th round. And I'm looking at Derek Forrest and I'm starting to think, maybe we stole him too in the 5th round. But where's my linebacker? We've been waiting on for so long. You spent a 1st round pick on a guy that I'm not sure what you were expecting when you spent the 1st round pick on him. I think he's got some traits that really do suit what you want to do in specific situations. I thought he was actually phenomenal this week against the Eagles. His job was to make sure Jalen Hurts didn't turn the corner, and at no point did Jalen Hurts turn the corner because 52 was tracking his ass down, and he knew he couldn't outrun him. But again, you drafted him to be a middle linebacker. He's not. Clearly, he's not a middle linebacker. And so here we go again, hurting multiple positions because you got to play musical chairs at a position that should have been rectified by now. If you're not going to make changes and you can't get these guys to get the message clear enough so that we don't keep repeating it. Like, one of the questions that I did appreciate the media asking is, hey, it's the same shit you said last week. You're saying the same shit again this week. Do you ever get tired of having to talk about the same shit over and over again? Like, what you gonna do? Like, I wish that at the end of that question they would have said, are you gonna start making some changes with some of these guys that are getting playing time and start to see if some of these other guys can play? Because clearly, whatever you're telling them, and he keeps talking about sitting in meeting rooms, and I'm hearing what these positional coaches are saying. I'm sitting in meetings. Who gives a shit? You keep telling us the same shit. I'm sitting in these meetings and I'm hearing what these coaches are saying. Well, guess what? Clearly that message isn't getting through to these players. because we making the same damn mistakes. And look, he even said, and I've said this already, the guys were in position. Kendall Fuller was in position. Benjamin St. Juste was in position. These guys just aren't dogs. He's like, it'd be nice if they could look back and find the football and make a play on it, because there were opportunities. You're damn right there were opportunities in this game. I said that yesterday. But that's not who we are, man. You can't ask a Shih Tzu to be a pit bull. These guys, that's not what they are. You can't ask these guys to be a Rottweiler. They're not. They don't want to bite anybody, and that's fine. But stop putting them in positions where they got to bite somebody, because they're not going to do it. So listening to him today was just like listening to Charlie Brown's teacher. Okay, cool. Rinse, repeat. All right, wash, rinse, cycle, repeat. So next week we'll probably be down 20-0 at halftime to the Cooper Rush-led Dallas Cowboys, if all things continue down the path that we're going on. Why will next week be any different? I don't know. Stop asking. We got one major injury from yesterday's game that we have to discuss, and we won't find out more about it until Wednesday when the injury report comes out. I think we got another casualty, another guy that probably won't be playing against Dallas, and that's going to be Sam Cosmi. Looked like he had a pretty bad ankle injury, in addition to looking like he probably hyperextended his knee on the same play. Tried to gut it out, came back in. He couldn't do it. And so I'd like to think that he won't be able to go. I mean, I trust Cornelius Lucas, but you want Cosmi out there. The only thing that's going to help him continue to get better is reps. And he missed time last year. He's going to miss some time, it looks like, maybe this year. Hopefully I'm wrong. But it didn't seem like something that he could just come back from in a matter of days. So we'll see. That was really the only major injury. I think for the most part, we came out of the game somewhat unscathed, and that's good, because we can't afford any more injuries really in this young season. So, we'll see what happens, what they decide to do on the offensive line, if anything. I doubt it. And, Monday Night Football, Giants, Cowboys, will determine if we're all alone in last place by ourselves, or if we have company. So we'll see. If you're a Washington fan, you should be rooting for the Dallas Cowboys tonight. Unfortunately, you don't want 2 3-0 teams and 2 1-2 teams. You want this thing spread out evenly, because I don't know if the Eagles are going to come back to the pack or not, because again, the schedule is really easy for everyone in the division, and it's all about who takes advantage of the schedule. So far, the Eagles have taken advantage of the schedule. They beat the Lions. They beat the Vikings. They're taking care of what they need to take care of in the NFC South and North. I talked about you need to go 6-2 versus the NFC South, or NFC North rather, in the AFC South. The Eagles are 2-0 in that NFC North division right now. And unfortunately, we're 1-0 against the AFC South, but we're 0-1 against the NFC North. And so we got time to clean it up, but before you know it, we'll be out of time, because we got games coming up. The Titans are coming to town, in week 5. The Vikings will be here before you know it. The Colts are coming soon. The Packers will be here, before you know it. I think they're week 7. It's going to get real quick. And if we still around here, talking about, what guys can't do, what they can do, if we still trying to figure out the little simple shit that you should have figured out already in the preseason, then, we'll be talking about 1-6 like we always are, 2-6. So we'll see what happens. But we'll dive into the NFC East. We'll go around the division after tonight's game on tomorrow's show, and we'll be in a much better position to talk about the division as a whole and what lies ahead for Washington. And that's going to be a big question. That's going to be a huge part of what we talk about with Washington is what's next. Where do we go from here? You're 1-2, a lot of football left to be played, 14 games. This thing is far from over. But, tonight's going to be fun, because you're going to get to see 2 teams that play real defense in this division. And you're going to see not a lot of offense, but you can win games. Teams are winning games 11-10. we can't give up less than 20 in the first half. So it'd be nice to be able to hold someone to 10 points or 11 points. Teams are winning games 14-12. We wouldn't dare dream of winning a game, 14-12, 11-10. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Commanders Nightly News. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys at the conclusion of Cowboys and Giants tonight for Monday Night Football overtime. We'll be back tomorrow with a brand new episode, and I've got a lot to say tomorrow, and we'll talk about that then. But until then, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening and take care, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Here comes the Diesel. Here comes the Diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 30.